On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many shall pass away, and how many shall be born? Who shall live and who shall die? Who shall live out their allotted time, and who shall depart before their time? Who by water, who by fire, who by thirst, who by earthquake? It gets oddly specific. These are words that come from the prayer Unatana Tokef, which we'll daven this afternoon during Musaf. I would have spoken later, closer to that, but I tend to tire easily, so we know that these are themes that will appear throughout the day. They shoved me here. I have always found the words of the Unatana Tokef unsettling. It's beautiful prose, and I do like poetry, but it has a razor-sharp edge. I also have to admit how I approach those words today as someone living with a chronic life-limiting illness has changed in tandem with my health. Who shall live and who shall die? That's not a rhetorical question for me. It cuts me, figuratively, if not literally. It also seems that the poet who wrote the Unatana Tokef left a few things out. The Talmud tells us that on Rosh Hashanah, the Holy One opens 3 books: the book of life, the book of death, and since very few of us are wholly good or wholly bad, a middle way. The rabbis teach that during the days of awe, those in the 3rd book, which doesn't get a name, have the ability to move their names to the book of life through tefillah, tzedakah, gemilut chasadim, prayer, charity, and acts of loving kindness. The rabbis instruct we should perform as much of those 3 things during the last 10 days as we possibly can. Sorry, I should have given you a heads up 10 days ago. But atonement is not a spectator sport. You gotta work. This all seems rather transactional to me, and as someone set squarely in the 3rd book, which for shorthand I've come to call the book of meh, I can't help but wonder if God is looking for quality or quantity. There's no evaluation matrix provided. How am I supposed to know how I'm being graded? Should I fail to accumulate enough good deeds, which I'm certain I have failed to do? Do I end up automatically in the book of death? It bothers me too that death is put out there like punishment for the wicked. Every single one of us, saint and sinner, will someday die. People have been doing it since the dawn of time, and for just as long we've been struggling to find in death the meaning of life. And that isn't as easy as, hey Rocky, watch me pull life's meaning out of my hat. Kafka wrote that the meaning of life is that it stops. The comedian Ricky Gervais, paraphrasing Kafka, said that it is exactly the inevitability of death that makes living so urgent. Scarcity does directly correlate with value. The important lesson here is to keep looking for beauty, to keep living, to use every moment of the time you have. Death for me is not an abstract possibility, but something I have to face head on, even while I attempt to put off the inevitable as long as I possibly can. People get super uncomfortable when you raise the topic of death, and I understand, but we don't have that luxury of denial. Studies have been clear. Discussing death makes it less frightening, which can only make the physical act of dying more peaceful. The Dalai Lama teaches, if you're mindful of death, it will not come as a surprise. You won't be anxious. You will feel that death is merely like changing clothes. Or, as J.K. Rowling wrote, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. I am, in many ways, the luckiest person in this room. I know with some certainty how, if not when, I will die. One day in the not-so-distant future, my immune system will attack my heart and it will stop. How is that lucky? Well, I've been through it a few times already, and I know how it feels. And that, for some reason, I found immensely comforting. Once it occurred to me that nothing will happen to me that I haven't experienced before, well, it chased away any fear I had. Whatever energy I would otherwise waste on worry and fear of the unknowable can now be used to love my family and friends, my wife, my son, more fiercely, to show my gratitude to all those people who have been so good to me, to see every warm, sunny day as a treat to be devoured and savored, to see time spent up with my dogs as a gift from God. It appears I have been given my own rather extended days of awe, during which I plan to write my own book of life, one where I can focus on treating people lovingly, without judgment, laughter, tears. I won't be around to enjoy my dotage, so I've resolved to live in the immediacy and the urgency of life, rather than wallowing in a cesspool of self-pity. I really think that's what Ricky Gervais would have wanted. I'm gonna make my days of awe count. I'm gonna appreciate what I have rather than bleeding about what I don't have or regretting what I never got to do. I will make every day a conscious decision to look for the blessings and the beauty in everyday life and to express my gratitude to God and to my loved ones for the joys and sorrows that are part of the immediacy of living. Now, I don't know if that counts for atonement or teshuvah, but I do know it's what I can do. Illness has stripped away most of the things 5 years ago I would have said were fundamental to who I was as a person. I no longer am able to work. I can no longer sing. I can no longer dance. I find most of my art beyond my physical strength. I can no longer cook or bake like I used to. Although I do still feel charmed when my challah turns out good. I can no longer consume enough calories to sustain my body, and I live in constant pain. But is often the case, when we have losses, those losses also come with opportunities for grace. As Jelly Roll sang, it's not okay, but it's all gonna be all right. I may not be solo material anymore, but I find myself at services with my eyes closed, listening with my whole body, allowing the music and the prayer to envelop me as I sing as much as I can. When I can't, well, when I don't have the breath or the strength to sing, I pray with my ears. I feel the music palpably, and it feels so much like joy. I take it home with me every time I leave here. Where the kitchen used to be my domain, I now tamp down my arrogance and ego and let my wife have the chance to show her love and care for me. I've had to set aside independence and modesty without embarrassment and allow caregivers to wash and to dress me, which for someone like me who has been plagued with body issues for most of my life, that in and of itself feels like an act of contrition. I've been freed from the shackles of others' expectations, and I've learned to embrace a life of authenticity, even if authenticity isn't always pretty or comfortable. That's one reason I so appreciate Mishkan and all of the people who are building it. Whether it's knowing the progressive Hever Kadisha exists to embrace all people at the end of their lives, or the support groups for grief, sobriety, and chronic illness at Maggie's Place. I know that Mishkan is a community in which we practice love and radical acceptance in all of our messy authenticity. On Rosh Hashanah, I stood on this bima for an aliyah and to bench Gomel. Simply standing here was proving more taxing than I had thought, and the emotional cost of benching Gomel was breaking me. Then a woman standing on my right, also traversing the painful landscapes that had brought all of us up to the bima to bench Gomel. She rested her hand on my shoulder, and she kept it there, grounding me in my community of love, pulling me a fraction closer, letting me know I wasn't going to be alone. We weren't introduced, but if she's here today, I really want to thank her. At some point, I realized the act of living in the present requires an act of faith. If I want something more from life than loneliness and illness, I have to make friends with the unknown and have faith that there are good days ahead. Personally, I had to sit with that for a while because faith and I, well, sometimes faith is a limited resource for me. I called out from the narrow place, Mincha metzar karati ya, and I found comfort and inspiration in the words of the English poet Minnie Louise Haskins, who wrote, "And I said to the man who stood at the gate of the year, 'Give me a light that I may tread safely into the unknown.' And he replied, 'Go out into the darkness and put your hand into the hand of God. That shall be better to you than light and safer than a known way.'" Hearing those words the first time changed me. They have become a psalm to me. So what does this whole mishmash mean for you? I'm getting there, I promise. I hope you take it as a challenge. Stop worrying about things you can't change and try to embrace the fleeting nature of now. Mindfulness isn't listening to an app. It's about listening to people. It's about being fully, authentically, and lovingly present in the moment, even the painful ones, even the flawed ones. Be generous with your help and affection, forgive quickly, and never miss an opportunity to pet a dog. When I'm on my deathbed, I promise you, I will have regrets, but none of them will be about the time I spent with my dogs, Sadie and Louie. Life is too short to throw it away on worry and fear. Look for the joy around you and revel in it. Look for someone lonely or feeling unloved or unlovable and prove them wrong. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, Jenna Cohen and our amazing davening team helped close out the service with these inspiring words. Drench yourself with words unspoken. Live your life with arms wide open. Today is where your book begins. The rest is left unwritten. When the doors on the ark in the waning moments of daylight this afternoon, when they close, God gives us a potent symbol of the divine closing the book of life. But for God's sake, don't put down your pen. Keep writing your own book of life. Make it a thriller. Make it a love story, hell, make it a musical. Just keep putting words on the metaphorical paper. Ending on an even more personal note, I'm tucking in here a very personal request. Please cherish Mishkan like a fragile treasure, because that's exactly what it is. It is fragile, it is flawed, and it is precious, because every single one of us is fragile and flawed and precious. I know this devar has been all over the place. So far it's referenced, subtly or not so. The sages, Kafka, Rashi, Ricky Gervais, Bullwinkle Moose, an obscure British poet, Albus Dumbledore, RuPaul, Jelly Roll, and the Dalai Lama. As an aside, how many Yom Kippur drashas around the world do you think quoted Jelly Roll today? Or Ricky Gervais, for that matter. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak to you today. It's the greatest honor I have ever known, and you can never know how much it meant to me. This is the most beautiful sight I have ever seen. Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be sealed for good in your book of life.